Hi, this is Vicki from Learning Services. Today I'm going to talk about the Learning and Study Strategies Inventory. If you're completing the Academic Success Certificate, this is the first journal that you need to complete. The Learning and Study Strategies Inventory is a self-assessment that measures your knowledge of and use of different learning strategies. It helps you identify the areas of strength and areas of growth. This assessment will provide you with some feedback and suggestions for improvement. While there are 10 different scales on the LASSI, we can break them up into 3 different components. These 3 components are the will component, the skill component, and the self-regulation component. For the first component, will, it includes the scales of attitude, motivation, and anxiety. This is actually trying to measure your willingness to do the work. It's not about how smart you are, it's are you willing to put in the work that's needed in order to be successful in college. So for the attitude scale, that measures your interest in getting a college degree and do you have the internal resources or the motivation to persist when you're faced with obstacles. Now the anxiety scale is not measuring mental health anxiety. In this case, it's measuring anxiety as related to completing your academic work. Anxiety can really get in the way of your learning and your memory, and it can make it difficult to do some tasks. You may have actually start avoiding doing some tasks. Or if you missed a class, maybe now you're a little bit embarrassed and reluctant to go back to class or talk to the professor and ask for help. Don't let anxiety overwhelm you. If you get that feeling, that heightened feeling of being anxious and having maybe your heart racing a little bit, if you just keep working, take a couple deep breaths, that feeling will subside and push through so that you can get your academic work done. One of the things you can do with anxiety is to reframe it. So instead of thinking I'm really anxious and nervous about this test, I'm excited to show the professor what I know. So that anxiety feeling can actually be redirected so you can use the energy that you get to help you with your focus and attention during the exam. So that's the first component. The second component is the skill component. This one includes selecting main ideas, information processing, and test strategies. There's way too much information to memorize in college, and in fact, that's not what we want. We want students to learn and think and be able to come up with new solutions for things. So it's not just about memorizing information. We certainly need to be able to remember information, but that's not the main purpose. So as a student, you have 2 jobs. First, you've got to figure out what's most important. That's selecting main ideas. And you've got to organize it in a way that makes sense to you. That's the information processing piece. If you're reading a textbook chapter, there might be 7 to 9 main ideas, and your job is to make sure you understand those 7 to 9 main ideas. You don't have to memorize all that information. You just need to pick out those main points, and you can use the headings in the chapter to help you figure that out. You also want to have a way of organizing that information in your mind, an acronym to help remind you of what the information means, a concept map of the information, or a chart or a Venn diagram. That's the information processing piece, organizing the information in a way that makes sense to you. For our third scale, test strategies, what are the strategies you use to prepare for a test, including breaking down the information, studying a little bit every day, and then the strategies used during a test. So things like looking over the exam before you start, making a timeline of, okay, I'm gonna give myself X number of minutes per question so that I still have 10 minutes to check my answers at the end. And then the third component is self-regulation. That includes time management, concentration, using academic resources, and self-testing. So for time management, when you come to college, this may be the first time that you're in charge of your own schedule, and you get to decide what time you need to get up in the morning, what time you need to leave for class, what time you have lunch, how much time to spend on studying. And that can be a bit of a challenge because it looks like when you put your schedule together, oh, I have all this free time because I'm only in class for 15 hours. It means that you're actually supposed to be spending a lot of that unscheduled time in study activities. We want you to have time for studying and for engaging in social activities and perhaps getting a job. So you need to have some strategies in place to help you manage all of those different obligations. For the concentration scale, this is where you want to manage your concentration. There's lots of things happening on campus. There's lots of temptations, and it's very easy to try to study in a location that has a lot of external distractors. So you want to go someplace that's going to help you with your concentration, like studying in a quiet location, like Patriot Lounge or one of the library locations. There's also your internal distractors that can get in the way. And so having some strategies in place to help you manage those internal distractions is another part of this scale that we want to make sure that students are addressing. Using academic resources. I know when I went to school, I thought I could just do everything on my own and that I did not need to ask for help. But it's very important that you go ahead and use the resources that are here. Things like learning services or tutoring or going to professors' office hours. We know from research that this is essential for student success while in college. It's not a sign of weakness to ask for help. In fact, it shows great strength and that you want to improve yourself. And that's the reason why the university provides all these different supports and resources. Make some use of them. They're going to certainly help lower your stress and anxiety level. They can help you do things more efficiently and effectively. And you might get some opportunities that you never even dreamed of, like going to the office of Oscar, where you can get involved in research on campus, or you can do your own creative activity and apply for funding through it. If you didn't use that resource, you would not know that it even existed. And then we've got our most important study strategy, which is self-testing. So the most common strategy that students use to prepare for tests is rereading, and that gives you a false sense that you know it because the stuff looks familiar when you're reading it over and over again, but then you go to take an exam and you realize, oh my gosh, it looks familiar, but I cannot remember the actual answers. The testing is going to be more challenging than you faced maybe in high school or even community college if you're a transfer student. When we get into those upper division classes, it is going to be more reliant on your memory and your understanding of the concepts and your ability to apply the information. The only way you're going to know if you actually know the information or not is through self-testing. This is the most effective study strategy. So instead of just rereading things, it would be quizzing yourself. Do I know the difference between these different concepts? Can I answer this math problem without an example problem? I need to do that on my own. So approaching things like homework as if it's a quiz or an exam and answering the questions as best you can without referring to your resources, that's going to give you a better sense of the things that you know and the things that you don't know. So you've received your LASSI results and you might be wondering what the numbers mean. So what you get is not your raw data. Instead, they use what's called a percentile score. So it's your results compared to other college students who've taken this assessment. They do a statistical measurement and they convert all of the raw scores to norm scores. That means every scale has an average of 50. So half people score above 50 and half the people score below 50. Now, we're George Mason University and we want everybody to be above average. So anything that's below a 50 is an area that you should work on improving. But if your score is between 50 and 75, you still have a little bit of room for improvement. If you've got a scale that you scored above a 75, you can be confident that that's an area of strength and you don't need to worry about that. The LASSI is research-based. These scales and components are based on what we know about student success in college. Take a look at those results and think about the areas you might work on improving through the Academic Success Certificate program. See how you can leverage what you're learning in the certificate by doing all the different activities, the journals, and the workshops to improve your performance. If you need additional help, please reach out to us in Learning Services if you have any questions, or if you would like to make an appointment for academic coaching, we'd be happy to assist you.